Hi everyone, Ghazal this side. So we'll be waiting for a couple more minutes for more people to join and then we'll begin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hi everyone. Welcome to Protect Academy's webinar. This is going to be another one of our live streams. And today we have Mr. Saz Rai with us. He is a renowned information security expert. He's known all over the world for his 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 vast depth of knowledge and his experience and his expertise. So, today we will be discussing all things CISM basically, and this webinar is especially focused on the candidates who are aspiring to go for their CISM examination and they need some kind of a roadmap to succeed in their quest. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand this stage over to Mr. Saz Rai. So, sir, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Can you please confirm if I'm loud and clear? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're perfectly audible.
And I'm sharing my screen as well.
Yeah, and we can see you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for the confirmation. So, hi
Yeah.
everyone. Welcome. Just quick introduction here. My name is Saj Rai. I have over 2 decades of experience working in various industries, including insurance, retail, NBFC, education, healthcare, and so on. And I have been teaching and training for over 10 years now, and that is something that I'm very passionate about. And I am an authorized instructor for IC2, ISACA, and several cybersecurity courses. So that's my introduction, brief introduction, and I'm looking forward to this webinar to uh, talk to you about the season and probably get you excited about it and make you the next season. So this webinar, what does it take to become a season? Let's get started with it without any further ado. Okay, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have. And so in the mean, if at any point you have any question, try to put it on the chat window. Do we have a chat window here, Gajal?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do have a chat window. In case you
Lovely,
don't see the comments, I will point them out to you.
perfect. Because I'm not able to see the comments at the moment.
All right, no worries.
Cool. And also, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and happy to take any questions again. So hopefully this is going to be a useful session for all of you who join in. Well, let me quickly introduce what CISM is. And, well, to understand CISM, we need to understand the organization called ISACA. ISACA has been around for a long, long, long time now, and they do have several causes, out of which CISM is obviously the topic that we're discussing here. Um, but they do have several other certifications, out of which CISA is very popular. CISA has been the oldest one, almost 40, 50 years now. And CISM almost since early 2000s, almost 20, 25 years. Apart from that, the CRISC is very popular, CGEIT, CDPSC, and so on. The COVID is another framework that we need to be aware of. If you're preparing for any ISACA exams, we do a lot of reference to the COVID, which is an governance enterprise IT framework. It's a really good one. But the point is that ISACA has several courses that you may want to be interested in. But today we will be discussing about the CISM, right? So Certified Information Security Manager, and we'll discuss what it takes to be CISM, and I'll probably take you through some of the domains, some brief ideas about what to expect for domain. And well, first of all, this course is designed for those who manage, design, oversee, and assess an enterprise's information security function. So it's a managerial course and it's not a technician course. That's one thing you need to understand. So a lot of people come from a technical background with having experience done a lot of technical stuff, like maybe you've been managing firewalls and identity and access controls and so on. And this course is to take you to the next level where you start thinking like a manager, where you start making the decisions. You need to be able to design the what's the right control that we should have. And well, we're going to ask the questions, which is what do we need to do, and more importantly, why do we need to do, rather than how to do. Okay, to give an example, what do we do to protect our network perimeter security? And we may think about controls such as um, firewalls, IDS, IPS, and so on. And another question probably you need to understand is why IDS or why IPS, which one is better, which one to use to be able to justify the solution. But the course is not going to teach you how to configure a firewall or an IDS and IPS. This is not the that technical course, right? It's not a technician's course. This is a managerial course where you are going to be making a lot of decisions. Even the exam questions are designed in such a way that will test your knowledge whether you can make these decisions about the what and the why. A simple example could be they give you all four options which are correct, and what your job is to find is not the correct answer because all the options are correct. What you need to find is the best answer amongst all of these. So best answer, or it could be what's the first thing you're going to do, or the last thing you're going to do, or the least important, or whatever those uh, objective of that question is. So the point is that you are to make those decisions, which is the right solution for the organization. So understanding the organization need and providing that solution is what is expected of you as a citizen. It's a managerial course, like I said, and you will need to think like a manager, right? Well, benefits of CSIM certification. And I'm pretty sure most of you understand the reason why CSIM is such a powerful and such a popular course. And the knowledge it gives you is amazing. The depth of knowledge around the domains which we will gonna discuss is very very good. And It expands on the knowledge and the skills, builds your confidence. Just to give you an example from my own personal example, I was a CISSP for a long, long time back, and I thought that CISSP is the certificate, right? It's the certificate. And I thought, well, so why do I need to do a CISM? I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it? And in fact, CISM has a lot less domains compared to a CISSP. But then I one day decided to do the CISM, and that is when I realized the value, because CISM covers those domains. It's not too many domains. There are four domains, but the depth is really good. It kind of gives you that depth which is missing in courses like a CISSP. So that knowledge and skill that you build is very, very valuable. Okay, so that's something why I recommend a season, because it gives you the perspective of how to think like a manager and go into the depth which is needed for you to become a information security manager. The CISSP will give you the breadth of knowledge, a lot of concept to understand, but misses out on the depth. Season gives you the depth. It doesn't give you a lot of contents to understand, but gives you the depth. So it kind of complements each other. So if you're planning ever to take a CISSP in the future, or season or similar courses in the future, they complement each other. So this is highly recommended, this particular course, as far as knowledge is concerned. Well, increases in market value, that's another one, right? I see a lot of demand for season. I was just today checking all the portals and found a lot of requirement for a season. So it's out there, right? Builds customer confidence and international credibility. Now, this particular certificate is recognized across the world, wherever you are, wherever you go, whichever part of the world you are, and it builds customer confidence, knowing that you are a seasoned certified person who's done the hard work, who's had the skill sets to become a seasoned, because not everybody's cup of tea. And many times it helps meet the employment requirements. So especially in your government work, especially in the US, there are specific requirements for you to become a citizen. But even then, many of the job requirements requires excuse me, you to be a CISM. So that's something which I will highly recommend. CISM or certificates like this will get you to the door, the interview sit. I mean, after that, obviously, it's your knowledge and your skill set that sets you apart. But having said that, it takes you to that door, because this is the one of the fundamental requirement in even getting that interview. You know, and if you gain the knowledge, then certainly you can clear the interviews as well. The experience required is 5 years as an information security management. When I say 5 years of management experience, it doesn't mean that you have to have a designation of a manager. It doesn't have to have a manager designation, as long as you're working in those domains, such as incident management and so on. It should suffice if you're managing firewalls, and that should be fine. But 5 years of experience is what you need to be able to submit and prove in order to become a CISM. Well, there is an experience waiver up to 2 years. If this is what you need, you may want to explore that option as well. So, which means with the 3 years of experience as well, you should be able to become a CISM. Exam duration, it's a 4 hours exam, 150 multiple choice questions. The exams can be taken online or offline. So that's the best part, I think, the online exams. Uh, okay, so in fact, I took one exam today afternoon, and I've just completed an exam. So it's convenient. You can take the exam at home, at your convenient place. Though you may need to schedule much before, because it's just pretty packed. But then it's quite convenient. You can take it in the middle of the night whenever you're free. Yeah, so just plan in advance whenever you want to take the exam. But if you are more comfortable going to an exam center, then that's also available depending on wherever you are. But personally, I like the online exam. The exam fees, this is something that you I want you to consider, is it's an expensive exam. If you are a member, it's $575. If not, $760. The membership fee is almost about one total about 140 to $150, depending on various things. But if even if you add up the membership fee, it's always cheaper to become a member and take the exam. So they encourage you to become a member in that sense. Now, there are other benefits of becoming a member, such as you get a lot of discounts when you're purchasing some study materials, or they give you a lot of free stuff to download. And so I will highly encourage you become a member if you are planning to become, if you're planning to take the exam, it's always beneficial. Okay. If you do not want to, then you have to pay those non-member fees, which are generally very expensive. Okay. So membership fees, as I mentioned, uh, they do give you a lot of other benefits. There are local membership fees that you may want to pay. That's again your choice. But again, this is something you might want to consider becoming a member. Okay. The exam resources. Well, the good thing about it, ISACA exams is they do have official manuals. The review manual is pretty good. It's pretty good. Um, they do have this review manual that should be your primary study material, and they also publish the question answers with explanations. That's also again something highly recommended, because the Q&A will help you understand the type of questions that gets asked in the exam, and to look out for those tricks that the Asaka generally plays. Okay, so that's highly recommended again to prepare for the exam. Usually these two materials are good enough in my experience, but there are other reference materials that one can study. Okay. But these two should be good enough. If you have these two, if you're studying from these two, more importantly, if you've understood the concepts, there is nothing to memorize here. That's the good part about these exams. It's not about memorization, and it's not about dumps as well, right? So compared to many exams where you can study the dumps, memorize it, and pass the exam, well, CSIM is not those kind of exam. This is where you need to understand the concepts. The questions are a little tricky, but if you have understood the concept, you will be able to understand. You'll be able to answer these questions. Another resource, which is this is free, Exam Candidate Guide is a free resource. It's very useful. It's you can download it, and it kind of gives you the do's and don'ts, what to do, and it's like just a guidance to take the exam. Okay. So these are the review manuals and the Q&A and the Exam Candidate Guide. And apart from that, there are some communities. I'll talk about that later on, but this should be good enough to be ready for the exam. Now, the job practice area, these are your domains. There are 4 domains that you need to study. The first one is an information security governance. The second domain is information security risk management. The third is information security program. And the fourth is incident management. You can see there are certain weightages around these questions, though I don't necessarily look into these weightages. Um, but be aware of it, okay? But you don't have to um, focus on these weightages. You need to prepare for all the domains as if they are, uh, they are important. Yeah, all of them are important. So just to give you an overview again of these domains, and I'll take you through this as well, just to give you an idea. One more time, the information security governance. Now, here you need to understand the need for information security. And usually, again, coming from a very technical background, you don't have the visibility on the top, right? So, if I'm just my responsibility, I'm managing, let's say, identity and access management. My responsibility is managing firewall. So, I don't have that visibility as to how this, my job as a firewall administrator, will help the information security at the very top. So information security governance is going to give you that clear visibility as to the need for information security and the roles and responsibilities wherein the senior leadership, including the board of directors, how they are involved in this information security governance. So it gives you the bigger picture. As an information security manager, you need to see that the need for aligning your security to the needs of the business, right? In the sense that whenever you purchase a solution, IT solution, or information security solutions, like you want to buy a Caspi solution, or you want to SIEM or SOAR, or whatever solution it is, it needs to be about the business. So it gives you that mindset, that that eye opening. So whenever somebody takes this particular domain, first of all, most of them kind of like, oh, what is this? Because they've never experienced this, never, because they've never interacted with the board or the senior leadership. And so this becomes one of those eye-opening domain to help you see the bigger picture. And one of the major responsibility as an information security governance is managing risk for the organization. So the risk management is the second domain, which is a very, very important domain. Very important domain. And this domain is where you understand what the risk is. I'll take you through that very briefly later on. And it doesn't matter what role you play in the organization, you are, in a way, helping organization mitigate the risk, right? You could be your role could be into penetration testing or vulnerability assessment or patching the system or managing firewall. Whatever role that you play, you are contributing to managing the risk. But here, you will be able to look at the risk again at a holistic level from the organization perspective and looking at the bigger picture of how risk needs to be managed for the organization. So again, a very important domain that I highly recommend. And in fact, there's another course I mentioned earlier on called C-Risk. C-Risk is for risk management only, risk management professional. So C-Risk, in fact, covers the risk management in detail. So there are four domains uh, of risk management there. And here we just deal it in one domain, but there are four domains for risk management. So that is a lot more in detail. So if you're interested in risk management, I will highly recommend that you consider C-Risk. It's one of my favorite courses, C-Risk, and you might want to consider that. Next is the information security program. Now, this is one of those slightly technical domain. So those who come from a technical background, managing firewalls, IDS, IPS, identity and access control, this is where you find something very familiar, lots of those topics. But having said that, you also will need to, again, coming from that governance perspective, have policies in place, standards, procedures, trainings, okay, and so on, metrics to measure how the program is going, and implementing these controls, the technical controls. Again, important domain here, but slightly technical in that sense, right? And the final domain is incident management. This is, again, making sure once you have the program, once you have the risk under control, then you want to make sure you have a resilient, smooth operations. And one of the ways is to manage incidents, right? So making sure that the incidents don't um, hamper the business. You're able to manage incidents properly because there will be incidents. I mean, there's no such thing as zero incidents. There will be incidents, but you don't want the incidents um, to kind of disrupt the business. And so you want to manage those incidents within acceptable levels. Apart from that, incident management, it also ties up with the business continuity and the disaster recovery as well. And somewhere there, we also have to think about things like digital forensics. So again, a very interesting domain, incident management. Overall, as I mentioned, this is a really good package as far as an information security manager is concerned. So starting with domain one, talking about the need for information security governance, the bigger picture, then managing risk, then implementing the program, and then managing the incidents and the business's continuity and disaster recovery. So these are the bigger picture that you need to be able to manage as a information security manager. Now, yeah, this is domain. I'll quickly take you through some of these points here. Do we have any questions so far?
No, sir, no questions so far.
All right, great. We'll take the questions later on again. But as I mentioned, information security governance, these are the specific agenda points here, right? So we have uh, the enterprise governance, information security strategy. These are the points you need to know, because security is, you need to understand from the cultural point of view what kind of organization you have, right? For example, an organization could be a risk aware organization, okay, we have a mature organization with risk, but or it could be uh, I don't care, or a blaming culture, right? So I don't care, or another ways it's a learning culture, or a compliant or a non-compliant culture. So understanding the culture becomes important, and how do you set up those cultures, right? And again, handling legal, regulatory, contractual requirements, important here. Understanding the organizational structures, the RACI matrix, who is responsible, who is accountable, what is the role of the board of directors and the senior management, or the security manager, what are the roles, who does what, steering committee, how do they help. So these are important roles and that you need to understand. Information security strategy, then you need to have a strategy. Strategy is the how, what do we do, how do we mitigate the risk, or what is it that we're going to do in a high level plan. And one of the things you will do is ensure that your information security investment is directly linked to your business goals and objectives. So you will create business cases. Very important. You need to be able to convince the management, hey, give me money, give me the resources, right? How do you do so? Well, by creating business case, compelling business cases. And again, you learn how to do those things, and focusing on getting that support. How do I get that support? What are the things I need to focus on? One of which is that business, they need to understand the the importance of IT, how IT or information security will help them achieve their goals and objectives. So if you're able to help them see that, you get your budget. Yeah. So these are some of the topics that you will need to understand. Again, nothing to memorize here, but important points to understand. Right. So these are some of the governance objectives, like strategic alignment, risk management, value delivery, resource optimization, performance measurement, and process integration. These are the things which you probably need to understand as part of this governance concept, right? So you should know what does strategic alignment mean. It means that your investment, your IT strategy is aligned to the business strategy. That's what it means. Okay, let's see. The second domain, which is information security risk management, and as I mentioned, this is a a very important domain where, as an organization, you need to be able to manage risk for your organization. As a season, you need to manage risk, and you understand what is risk. And does anybody know what is risk? How do you measure risk? Risk equals to, I don't think I'll be able to see. Oh, I can see the chats. You can put it on the chat window. What is the risk? How do you measure risk? How do you measure risk? Risk equals to a likelihood into impact, right? Likelihood of what? Likelihood of a threat exploiting the vulnerabilities. Yes, very good. And the vulnerability is missing. So threat exploiting the vulnerability and the resulting impact, the likelihood. So these things we need to understand here in detail, understanding the vulnerability, the risk, the threats, impacts. And then what do we do with the risk? Once we understand what the risk is, then we treat the risk, we respond to the risk, right? We treat the risk. And assigning a risk ownership. Okay, why is it important to have a risk owner or a control owner? Okay, well, the answer would be accountability, right? It's a risk owner, control owner. Are they same? Can they be same? Can they be different? So these kind of quite a question that you get asked, and then risk monitoring and reporting. Now, this is the typical life cycle you have. So first of all, you identify the risk. Right? Risk is, well, likelihood into impact. A likelihood of what? A likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability, resulting in certain damage or impact. Right. So once you understand what the risk is, then you assess the risk, saying, okay, risk is either do a qualitative where you understand risk is high, medium, low, or risk is worth, well, $50,000 or $1 million. So you know what the risk is, how much is the risk, so that you can now take a informed decision as to how to deal with the risk, right? And okay, and then you will respond to the risk. Once you know what the risk is, then you respond to the risk. How do you respond? You either, I remember the TAMA, that's how I remember, TAMA, transfer, avoid, mitigate, or accept. Yeah. And once you take action on the risk, respond to the risk, then you will need to continue monitoring the risk. Monitor the risk. Why? Because your risk environment will keep on changing. There will be new threats, new vulnerabilities, new attacks, and so on. We need to keep on monitoring the risk and reporting those risks to the appropriate authorities, such as the risk owner, the senior management. A typical life cycle that you need to understand. And as I mentioned, the C-risk covers this in detail. This is what I would highly recommend to take a C-risk course later on, whenever you are interested. Hang on, let me then take you to domain 3, which is information security program. And so once you have managed the risk for the organization, and you become the risk are within the acceptable levels. Now, who defines the acceptable levels? Well, it comes from the top. The senior leadership, the board decides the risk appetites, the risk tolerances. And after that, you can then implement a security program across the organization where everybody needs to be involved. It's not just you. Security is everybody's responsibility. So you need to have that program. You need to identify people, the tools, the technologies, right? Such as, like I said, things like your firewall and IDS, IPS, and all the stuff, SIEM solutions, and have the processes in place as well, right? And information asset identification and classification. So one of the key responsibility as part of security is to protect your valuable assets, valuable assets. And many of these assets are your uh, information that you have to protect. And so identifying what those assets are, classifying them becomes important, right? And you need to learn again, like who is responsible, who is accountable, and all the stuff around this classification. Okay, why do we need to classify? And what, you consider sensitivity, criticality, what's the difference between the two? All of these things are important because if you want to protect something, you need to know what to protect. Okay, if you want to protect something, you need to know what to protect, and without this classification you cannot. So sometimes they ask you these questions. So if you want to protect something, what's the first thing you do? Well, you got to classify the data. Okay, now even before that, what do? Well, you identify your data owner or the information owner, because information owner is the one who will classify the data. So they'll ask you what's the first thing you will do. So first thing is identify the information or the data owner, and that data owner is going to classify the data, and then you're going to protect the data. So you need to understand those concepts so that you know what to answer, right? And well, you can probably use standards and frameworks such as uh, COBIT, as I mentioned before, or your uh, ISO frameworks and so on. Okay, there are lots of frameworks that can help you get started, so without having to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so it doesn't get into any specific framework, but it gives you a broader idea as to how to go about it. And the important tools for your security is to have those policies, procedures, guidelines, standards. What's the difference between a policy, standard, procedures, guidelines, baselines? You need to understand those things. Who approves the policy? What are the components in the policy? Okay, so these are things which you need to understand very well. You may be required to develop these policies, or review the policies. So in this context of CISM, you are required to be developing these policies and strategies. Okay. And then you can also define the metrics such as your KPIs, key performance indicators, key risk indicators, key control indicators to measure how you're doing. You know, because there is investment, but are we gaining some returns on these investments? So you need to be able to show that. So this becomes important in that context. Okay. And then the control design and selection. Again, this is again part of your risk management itself. You probably need to have those controls. Like I said, the controls such as your could be your physical controls, administrative controls, technical controls. You need to be able to have these controls in place. Um, okay, you probably need to have information security awareness and training, managing third parties, communicating this program. So these are some of the things you will do as an information security manager, right? So setting up that program. What does a security program mean? So these are the things: having policies in place, controls in place, trainings, communications, and so on. And what else? What is this? Yeah, you need to be able to define the purpose of the program, which is to support and further the enterprise's business objectives. And what's the objective of the information security manager? You will be implementing and executing a program that manages information risk in a cost effective manner. So that's your job, to have that program across the organization, so where it's managing the risk to some acceptable levels, but also in a cost effective manner. So these are the things which you need to understand as an information security program manager. And then the final one, as I mentioned before, is the incident management. Incident management. So this is part A, where you understand the incident management readiness. You have incident response plans, the BIA, BCP, DRP, and so on, classifying the incidents. And then you also need to know about the tools like a SIEM solutions, IDS, IPS that can help you with the incident investigations. containing, and so on, the entire life cycle of the incident response plan. And also, finally, then you post incident review. Why is it important to have a post incident review? So the questions are all going to be about the what and the why. What are you going to do regarding containment? Okay. And why do we need to have a post incident? So all about what and the why. What kind of tools will help you detect and advance persistent threats? Okay. Those are the kind of questions you will be asked. So what and the why, right? So understanding what is an event, uh, understanding what's an event, what's an incident, uh, what's a problem, what's a disaster, how are they all related? Yeah, so very important to know. So what's an incident and how is it related to a disaster? For example, a fire could be an incident, but if you don't manage the fire on time properly, it becomes a disaster, and which could, take down the entire building, and it impacts your ability to operate. Or a ransomware attack, well, it's an incident, but if you don't manage the incident properly on time, it could grow and it could cripple the entire network, the entire organization. Now it becomes a disaster, right? So you need to now invoke your BCP and the DRP. So those things we need to be able to understand the relationship between all of these events, incidents, problem, disaster, and see how you're going to work together, all of these things, right? Yeah, these are the topics briefly. Now, just quickly take you through. I think we're running short of time. Is to I've given you the overview, right? So, what is it that you will need to do as a season, and how do you go about becoming a season? Now, well, first of all, like I said, you need to be familiar with these job practice areas. So the exam has they have specified what are the things you need to be able to do. They specify the tasks. But more than that, you need to understand those thumb rules that as a CSM, where you're thinking like a manager, these are the things which you need to prioritize. A simple example, like whenever there is a physical disaster or emergency, what should be the topmost priority? Yeah, what should be the number one priority? It should be to protect human lives. So if you know those thumb rules, that's how you're going to pass the exam. Right, so become familiar with these topics, and I've taken you through those what and the whys, right? Self-assessment, and you can use uh, those quizzes, the question answers that I mentioned. My recommendation is if you consistently score 70 and above, 70% and above, you're doing well. Then that's when you probably should take the exam. But if you're not doing so well, then you probably need to go back and again get back and understand the concepts. Because if you don't understand concepts, you will not be able to pass the exam. No memorization. You don't cram, avoid cramming. I've said this before. I've so known a lot of people fail when they cram for these kind of exams. Okay, so no cramming. You understand the concept. It has to be an iterative study because there's so much to learn that you will forget, right? So you learn about, let's say, RPO, RTO today. So you study today. Next week you've probably forgotten about it. So you come back, study again. But when you study it over a period of time, it now gets into your long-term memory, and then you start understanding. Oh yeah, this is what RTO is. What is RPO is? That's how the human brain works generally for most people. Well, if you are Elon Musk, then that's a different case study. But it's usually iterative study. You'll study domain one, go up to domain four. You probably will have to forget in domain one again, come back, study. So maybe multiple times, a few more times, then you probably would have it in your long-term memory. So plan it that way that you're studying iteratively. Okay. Finding a study group. So a couple of options. I think there are two I can recommend. The rest I wouldn't be able to recommend. One is obviously with us, and there are some WhatsApp group, I think, so you can join that group. And second is this: the ISACA also has this study group, and they post questions every day, and there are discussions around that, which I recommend that you join and be part of that group as well if you're preparing for this exam. Okay. And another question generally people ask is, how long should I prepare? Okay. Now, it all depends on your how much time can you spend, but let's break it down slow. I mean, if there are 4 domains, and say you spend 1 week per domain, right? And also that depends on how many hours can you spend every day. A couple of hours. Some can spend 8 hours, but dedicated. So even if you spend, let's say, 1 hour, a couple of hours every day, and you're able to manage to finish one domain in a week, then you have about 1 month. You're completing all the domains. You may want to spend a little more time just to do that iterative study, making sure that you've understood, you're remembering those concepts. So maybe in a month, maybe not more than 2 months, you should be taking the exam. Don't wait too long, because then well, work comes in the way. You have life gets in the way. You'll have projects to finish, holidays to spend, family needs your time. So it gets a little difficult then. So have that goal. Let's say you want to finish this in 1 month, then you prepare backwards, right? Or 2 months, then you prepare backwards, saying, okay, this is 2 months, this is my target. And that's usually what I recommend. 2 months, and I'm going to spend this many hours every day, completing this many domains per week. And that's how you break it down. There may be a couple of domains where you may need to focus more, and then you can adjust that accordingly. But once you consistently start scoring about 70%, then you are quite ready to take the exam. And also, as I mentioned, you need to plan a little ahead to take the exam, maybe 2 3 weeks before, because the exam centers may not be available. Okay. So that's my overall recommendations. I think we are good to take the exams now. All right. So I'm ready. If anybody has any questions,
So,
let
Sir
me.
Malcolm D'Souza had a question.
I can see
Uh,
it here. Let me just read it out. Okay. He says, is knowledge of technical security topics like VAPT, firewalls, IDs, etc., necessary for a person in a CISM role? The reason for asking this is most JDs include these topics with necessary hands-on knowledge. The answer is it depends, right? Now, the question is, for the exam, do I need to have a hands-on knowledge of this? The answer is no. Answer is no. The exam's not. It's not a technical exam. It's not going to test your knowledge on how to configure a firewall, an IDS, and IPS. Even as a manager, if you're in a role of a manager, you may not be doing this hands-on yourself. So I will have a team member who's able to be able to do so, right? But a certain hands-on knowledge would certainly help, because I would know, if I have to guide my team, I would know that. And every job has a specific need, so that's something that you need to understand the specific need of that job, and accordingly, prepare for it. but but I do recommend have some hands-on experience on some of these things, that whatever it is. uh, yeah. For me, I mean, if you ask me, did I work it as a firewall administrator or a VAPD? I never worked at it. But I know how it works, right? If somebody tells me something how to do it, I will be able to configure a firewall, looking at those guides and everything else. But I'm not a firewall administrator. I've never worked in that. But as a manager, I need to be able to know and guide my team, right? Guide my team. I don't need to be an expert in commands, that's Cisco commands. I don't need to be an expert in that. But if the job demands, well, uh, then you probably have to prepare for it. But as a CISM, you are more of a manager rather than a rather technician. Okay. So just check. Every specific job has a specific need, so you'll have to kind of check that out. But I hope that answers your question. If not, please do a follow up. Any other questions? Oh, we got some details on the screen. We do have a season session planned soon. So if you are interested, and you can always join our sessions, I will be happy to help you prepare for the exam, give you the tips, the knowledge that is needed, not only becoming a seasoned, but becoming a good security professional.
I think there are no further questions, sir.
Hmm.
So I think we can wrap up this session. Thank you so much, sir. This was very informative and highly educational. I'm sure everybody who attended the session learned a great deal. So thanks a lot, sir, for taking out the time and explaining everything in great detail. This is very helpful. And as Mr. Saz mentioned, that his CISM training will be starting from the 9th of March with us, with Protect Academy. And the details you can see on the screen. So please feel free to get in touch with us. We'll be happy to set you up and get you started. And as Sir mentioned, that it takes around 2 months, 60 days of good quality preparation to actually clear your CSM exam. So we'll be helping you out with that, and we'd love to have you on board. And Mr. Sazra is an excellent mentor. I think that there is no need to say that. Even everybody knows that already. So thanks a lot, sir, and hopefully we'll see you on board for some other webinar soon. And we'll keep conducting more webinars and more live streams in the future. And we'd love to have you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and all the best.
Okay, bye, bye, sir.
Thank you.